The Law of One, Book 5, Fragment 7, Session 16, January 31, 1981. Jim, the following material on silver flecks is curious in that these small, shiny pieces of what looked like silver rectangles would occasionally appear on or around us when we were discussing matters of a metaphysical nature. Apparently, if we were on the track of thinking that was felt appropriate by our subconscious minds, we would be given a sign of this correctness in the form of the silver fleck. There are apparently many different ways in which people may receive such subconscious confirmations of the appropriateness of their thoughts or actions. The most common, of course, is that feeling of rightness that wells up from within when one is on the right track or receiving spiritually helpful information. Carla, the awareness of this method of feedback from the winds of destiny is most helpful to one on a spiritual path. The natural world seems very open to the production of synchronicities that are subjectively meaningful. Once the seeker gets the presence of these signs and begins consciously to watch for them, she can actually have influence in the creating of more subjective signs, until there are times when meaningful coincidence seems to take on a constant presence in her life. I certainly have found these signs most comforting and strengthening. Session 16, January 31, 1981. Questioner: can you tell me of the silver flecks that we have found sometimes on our faces or elsewhere? Ra, I am Ra. These of which you speak are a materialization of a subjectively oriented signpost indicating to one mind/body/spirit complex, and no other, a meaning of subjective nature. Questioner: who creates these silver flecks? Ra, I am Ra. Picture, if you will, the increasing potential for learn/teaching. At some point a sign will be given indicating the appropriateness or importance of that learn/teaching. The entity itself, in cooperation with the inner planes, creates whatever signpost is most understandable or noticeable to it. Questioner: I understand then that we ourselves create this. Ra, I am Ra. Entities consciously do not create these. The roots of mind complex, having touched in understanding, intelligent infinity, create them. The Law of One, Book 5, Fragment 8, Session 17, February 3, 1981. Jim, before each contact with those of Ra we conducted a meditation which we used as our tuning device, that is, our means of becoming as one in our seeking to be of service to others. Oftentimes, during this meditation, Don would get a hunch as to an addition to the line of questioning which we had decided upon the night before. In Session 17 such a hunch came to him concerning a crater in the Tunguska region of Russia which, it is speculated, was made by either a crashed UFO or a large meteor of some kind in 1908. There is also speculation that some scientists of the Soviet Union first became interested in the possibility of life in other parts of the galaxy and solar system as a result of their investigation of this crater and its possible origin. After asking about this crater and following it up with questions concerning the development of nuclear energy on Earth and the odd and rarely reported phenomenon of spontaneous combustion of a human being, Don determined that this line of questioning would yield little of value. Carla, Donald was a scientist, and he never could quite accept that Ra was in no position to chat with us about phenomena that can be measured. The desire that had brought Ra to our group was a true desire for non-transient material, and this desire fueled our sessions. When we departed from that level of information, Ra would remind us to get back on track in a subtle way, by telling us to watch our alignments. We at first took them literally and thought they were referring to the items on the altar, to getting them lined up rightly. Later, we figured out that they were grading our questions, not our Bible and candle placement. It's worth emphasizing that anything measurable is also transient. The human spirit, the force of creative love, the creation's essence, these things are unfindable, noumenal, always sensed and never penetrated by our fact-finding intellects. But we sense into them through living with an open heart, and by talking about them with sources such as Ra and QUO and other universal or outer energies and essences. The personal guides and other teachers of the inner planes of our planet have much more leeway in offering personal information whenever their last incarnation Go to them to get your readings on your health and other specific issues. Go to outer sources such as our Confederation sources with questions that transcend space and time. If it will matter less in 10,000 years than it does now, it is probably not a universal question. Session 17, February 3, 1981. Questioner: in meditation I got the question about the crater in Russia in the, I believe, Tunguska region. Can you tell me what caused the crater? Ra, I am Ra. The destruction of a fission reactor caused this crater. Questioner: whose reactor? Ra, I am Ra. This was what you may call a drone sent by the Confederation which malfunctioned. It was moved to an area where its destruction would not cause infringement upon the will of mind/body/spirit complexes. It was then detonated. Questioner: what was its purpose in coming here? Ra, it was a drone designed to listen to the various signals of your peoples. You were, at that time, beginning work in a more technical sphere. We were interested in determining the extent and the rapidity of your advances. This drone was powered by a simple fission motor or engine, as you would call it. It was not that type which you now know, but was very small. However, it has the same destructive effect upon third-density molecular structures. Thus, as it malfunctioned, we felt it was best to pick a place for its destruction rather than attempt to retrieve it, for the possibility/probability modes for this maneuver looked very, very minute. Questioner: was its danger both blast and radiation? Ra, I am Ra. There is very little radiation, as you know of it, in this particular type of device. There is radiation which is localized, but the localization is such that it does not drift with the winds as does the emission of your somewhat primitive weapons. Questioner: I believe that analysis has detected very little radiation in the trees in this area. Is this low level of radiation a result of what you are speaking of? Ra, I am Ra. This is correct. The amount of radiation is very localized. However, the energy which is released is powerful enough to cause difficulties. Questioner: then was the Confederation responsible for the Earth receiving nuclear power? Ra, I am Ra. It is a point which one cannot judge what is cause. The basic equation which preceded this work was an equation brought through by a wanderer dedicated to service to the planet. That this work should have become the foundation for instruments of destruction was not intended and was not given. Questioner: can you tell me who this wanderer was who brought through the equation? Ra, I am Ra. This information seems harmless, as this entity is no longer of your planetary third density. This entity was named Sound Vibratory Complex, Albert. Questioner: is this the reason for what we call spontaneous combustion of human beings? Ra, I am Ra. This is not correct. Questioner: can you tell me what causes that phenomenon? Ra, I am Ra. Picture, if you will, a forest. One tree is struck by lightning. It burns. Lightning does not strike elsewhere. Elsewhere does not burn. There are random occurrences which do not have to do with the entity, but with the window phenomenon of which we spoke. Questioner: are these entities uniquely the same, or are they random entities? Ra, I am Ra. The latter is correct.